Hello and welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire for Scrapbooking Cards Today. Lately, die cutting has become very popular in scrapbooking and card making, so I thought it would be fun to show you 3 different ways you can add color and life to your die cuts so that they stand out on your scrapbook pages and cards. If you're like me, you probably have lots of cardstock scraps sitting around waiting to be used. So I'm going to show you how to die cut from those scraps and then add color afterwards in 3 different techniques. And these techniques work great with just about any die cuts you may have. Let's start with this one where I added color with ink and ink blending tools. I am starting with a simple white die cut, just cut from white scrap cardstock. This die is from Memory Box, and there are actually 3 different ones in the set, but I'm going to use the bold one because I really want to have a lot of color on my card. After I've run it through my die cut machine, I'm going to keep both the negative space and the positive smile piece. This is really going to be the ticket to helping me carefully add color to this die cut. So on the back of the negative space, I'm putting a piece of sticky tape. This is Post-it tape. You could use washi tape if you want to, so that the sticky portion is showing through the negative space. Then I'm taking the die cut and putting it back in its place. What I'm doing is using the negative space kind of as a holding ground as we apply ink over this fragile die cut. This makes a huge difference with this technique because we're using an inking tool and applying a lot of color on top. So now I'm taking a distress ink and an ink blending tool and rubbing different colors of ink over it to create a rainbow. Now the reason I use an ink blending tool, which you can use with any inks you may have, is it really helps in getting a nice even coverage. The reason I'm using distress inks is because they are designed to blend and they give great results. Now the trick with blending inks is to overlap the colors quite a bit. You'll see that I've put down an orange and a pink ink so far, and I really was careful to overlap the inks a lot. This allows for effortless blending. If you really want to have softer colors, you could use the same inks, but just put a lighter pressure down with your ink blending tool. If you don't have an ink blending tool, you can also use makeup applicators for this, but that tool is sure handy to have. So after I've applied all my colors, you can see how having our die cut in its negative space really helped to protect it while we put a lot of this ink on top. If we did it just on the die cut alone, the die cut would have moved a lot and maybe torn. If I wanted to, I could have inked up the whole negative space and saved the negative space for another card. So now I have my smile die cut with that great blended rainbow going across the whole thing, and I didn't destroy it in doing so. There are a couple more things that I want to do to this die cut to really make it stand out, but it's best to do and leave to dry after you've put your card together. So I've assembled my card together. I put some other die cuts in the background that are just plain white. And now I'm going in with my Wink of Stella glitter marker to add some shimmer over the entire die cut. It's hard to see in the video, but in real life, this shimmer is really beautiful and really makes all that color stand out even more. It almost has like a brush tip that really is easy to apply, and it's a subtle shimmer that's clear, so it doesn't change the color of the die cut behind it. Now after I've done this, I'm going to intensify that by adding some glossy accents on top. This is Glossy Accents, a product from Ranger that's just a great clear coating, also a great adhesive too, and I've put it into a fine line glue bottle so it's easier to squeeze out, but you can just use it from the regular Glossy Accents bottle. And I'm just going to squeeze the glossy accents to cover the entire die cut. With the shimmer behind the glossy accents, it really stands out and intensifies that shimmer and makes that colorful die cut look like an embellishment that you bought, not something that you made from plain white cardstock. Here's a close-up look at the final results with the shine and the color. It's really eye-catching. So that's our first technique of taking a plain die cut and transforming it and adding color with ink and an ink blending tool, and then a little bit of shine. For our second technique, I'm going to show you how to take a plain die cut and add some touches to it to really bring it to life and make it look realistic. The best part about this technique is you only need a few markers and it works with any colored die cuts that you have. So I'm going to die cut some feathers, these are from Simon Says Stamp, from some light blue scrap cardstock that I had. Now we want to make these look somewhat realistic, so we're going to add some color to them. Now I'm just going to temporarily adhere this to some scrap paper just to hold it still as we add our coloring. I am using 3 shades of Copic markers to add my shading and my realistic touches. The great thing is these 3 gray markers will work with any color die cuts. So even if you don't have a lot of Copic markers, you could just get these 3, and it's a great way to add realistic touches to your die cuts. If you don't want to use Copic markers or you want to use markers you have on hand, 3 shades of gray markers would work, but I really like how easily the Copic markers blend. So I'm going to start by adding my darkest color first. This is C5. It's like a medium dark shade of gray. And I'm just going to add some little touches here and there where I think the darkest color would be. Then I'm going to come in with my medium shade, which is a little bit lighter. It's a C3, and add a few touches with that too. I do make sure that I overlap the colors a little bit to soften it out. And then I come in with my lightest color, C1, and add some shading to kind of blend out those colors. At this point, I decided I wanted to add a little more shading, so I'm going back to my medium shade and then to my dark again for the final little touches. Now, you really don't have to spend a lot of time blending this out. These gray touches just really add some nice shadows and dimension, or the look of dimension, to your simple die cut. It completely transforms it. And I really like how the 3 different gray markers work with any color die cut. You could also use 3 different colors of gray colored pencils for this too if you want to, and add little highlights with the white colored pencil. I just really love this technique when I have a die cut that I want to add some dimension to. So there's a comparison of before and after and what a difference it makes. So with this technique, you can make a die cut look more realistic with some simple marker touches. The third technique also uses markers, but this shows you how you can get a multicolored image. This is great for die cuts that need different colors for different parts, like this one for the branch, the flowers, and the butterflies. But again, I started with a simple white die cut. This die is from Memory Box, and I loved how detailed it is, and it's perfect for a simple card. So I'm going to go ahead and die cut that from the white cardstock, and again, I'm going to keep the negative space. This will be helpful for holding that intricate die cut still while we do our coloring. I'm adding sticky tape once again to the back of the negative space so that the sticky shows through, and then I'll take the die cut itself and put it back in its position. I'll flip it over once I have it positioned just right and press from the other side just to make sure that it stays in there while we do our coloring. Again, this is a very light stick tape, so it won't tear our paper when we remove it. So for this, I wanted to use regular markers for it. I'm using some of my favorite markers. These are from Tombow. And I wanted to show you how you can get a blended look from these markers, even though they're not an alcohol-based marker. The trick is to put down some dark color, then overlap with the medium color, and then just kind of touch around on the areas where they overlap. So you can see I put down 2 colors, and then I'm just kind of going over the area where they overlap, making it blend. Now here you can see it wasn't really blending a lot between the pink and the purple. So what I did was scribbled some of that purple onto my craft sheet or onto a piece of plastic, picked up some of that purple with my pink marker and brought that to the paper to blend it a little bit. It won't ruin the tip of your marker if it's a color that's close. You just scribble it off on scrap paper when you're done. So let me show you how I did this on the butterflies. I put dark purple in the center of the butterflies. Then I came in with my medium purple and overlap the 2 colors a little bit, and that causes the blending. You can kind of see me tap my marker tip where the 2 colors overlap to help blend it. Next, I'm going to come in with the pink, which is a very different color here, and add that to the edge, and then overlap again. I'll tap it a few times with the tip of my marker to force the blending, but if I find that I'm not seeing the blending happen completely, I'll just scribble some of the purple, darker color onto my craft sheet, pick up a little bit of it with my pink marker, and add to the area where it overlaps. But on this intricate die cut, I didn't find a need to do that. Just overlapping the 2 colors was enough. Here I'm overlapping 2 colors of brown, so I put down the dark brown first, and then I'm coming in with a lighter brown color and filling in the rest of the areas, making sure to overlap to force the blending. Now I'm coming in with the green and adding some green to the tips of the leaves, a darker green, and then I came in with a medium green and forced the blending with that by just going over the area a little bit. The reason I tap the marker tip to the paper instead of scribbling when I want to blend is I don't want to cause my paper to pill by adding too much back and forth, so the tapping prevents that. For the flowers, I did a little bit of red in the center. Now you see me coming in with orange to blend around that, and then I'll come around with like an orangish yellow, so I'm working from dark to light. and then yellow just on the tips. And it's amazing how well this will blend by just tapping the overlapping colors. After I've finished adding all the color, I'm going to remove my die cut, and I'll see that there are little areas where I missed the color because it was hard to see in the negative space, so I just finish up those touches. And there we have a very colorful die cut that started white, but now has all kinds of color on it using just regular markers. I also love that when using these techniques, you can keep the rest of the card simple since your die cuts really stand out. So there you have 3 different ways you can take a simple plain colored die cut and add life to it with either ink or markers. I hope this inspires you to break out your scraps and your dies and have some fun coloring. Thanks so much for watching, and hope to see you again here at Scrapbooking Cards Today.